expertise. This is an overview of what we will talk about today. I will talk about the opportunities of clinical research in Egypt and the challenges or barriers against the clinical research. And also I will describe the career path for the clinical researcher at the end of this presentation. We will start with the opportunities for clinical research in Egypt. This map is showing the ancient Egypt with all major cities and pyramids and temples. And also this photo is the ancient Egyptian language, which is the hieroglyphic. So you may love to write your name with the ancient Egyptian symbols. So first of all, I'd like to explain the process of introducing a new drug product to the market. In order to introduce a new drug product to the market, we have to conduct two types of researches. The first type is called the preclinical research, and the second type is called the clinical research. The preclinical research, we have three types. The first type is called in silico trials or in silico experiment, in which the researcher is explain or evaluate the molecule or the new chemical entity on the computer softwares. The second type is in vitro trials, in which the researcher is examining the drug on cells, on chemicals, on the laboratory experiment. And certain types of preclinical trials is performed on animals. These trials just to discover a new molecule, to formulate a dosage form. Then we will use this drug product on people or on human. When we use this drug or test this drug on human, this is called clinical trials. The clinical trials actually pass through three important phases before the drug is being marketed or reaches the market. Most clinical trials should be done in these three steps. If the new treatment or the new drug is successful in one step, for phase 1, it will go through the phase 2 and phase 3 and so on. Phase 1 clinical trials are small, enrolling less than 100, usually around 30 individual or 30 participants. It is designed to find a safe dose. For phase 1 trials, we usually test the drug to find a safe dose to be used in human. If we find that safe dose, we will go to the phase 2 clinical trials, in which more patients are enrolled, usually around 100 or 200 participants. In phase 2 clinical trials, we test this treatment, how it's work in the pulse. You know the pharmacokinetics, how the drug is absorbed, metabolized, how it's excreted or eliminated, and so on. And the drug is also being tested for some efficacy. It should show some efficacy. If the drug is proven to be safe and showing some benefit, we will go to phase 3 clinical trials. The phase 3 require many participants. Many participants are needed, sometimes thousands of patients. In phase 3 trials, we compared this new treatment or this new drugs with the current treatment or the current standard of care to see which one is better. Phase 4 is called the post-marketing phase, which is usually done after the drug is being marketed or the drug reaches the market actually. In order to conduct clinical research in Egypt, there are different pathways. In the following part, I am going to describe each pathway. The first pathway will be the governmental clinical research centers. which is related to the government or Ministry of Health or Ministry of Higher Education. These centers are staffed by healthcare professionals like physicians, pharmacists, and dentists. Some of them are assigned to conduct either observational studies or randomized controlled trials, according to specific protocols issued by the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Higher Education. I will show you some examples for the governmental clinical research centers. In Cairo, the capital of Egypt, we have the NRC, or the National Research Center. The National Research Center, which was established in 1956 with the aim of conducting basic and applied scientific research in many fields, multiple fields, including medicine, pharmacy, agriculture, with the aim of raising or supporting the national Egyptian economy. Another example is the National Cancer Institute, which was established in 1969. It is specialized in the oncology field and conducting clinical trials for cancer treatment. We also have governmental organizations like Cairo University and Ain Shams University, which can conduct randomized clinical trials, RCT, through their university hospitals, and so on. The photo is showing the GEM, or the Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo, which will open in 2021. It is expected to be the largest archaeological museum in the world. The second example will be clinical research centers in Alexandria. By the way, I am speaking today from Alexandria. In Alexandria, which is the second largest city in Egypt and the largest city on the Mediterranean, we have the CRC, Clinical Research Center, inside the University Hospital of Alexandria. And also we have the Medical Research Institute. All these governmental centers have the authority to conduct clinical researches and to enroll patients in clinical trials. We also have the Alexandria Faculty of Medicine, which belongs to the Alexandria University. It is also can perform clinical trials or conduct clinical trials and to enroll patients in such type of research. These photos are showing the Muntaza Palace in Alexandria and the Biblioteca Alexandrina, which is one of the largest libraries in the world. The second pathway for conducting clinical research in Egypt would be the multinational companies through their clinical research department. Most of the larger multinational companies have their own clinical research department. Companies like Sanofi Aventis or AstraZeneca in Egypt, actually they have a separate clinical research department inside the company. However, many multinational companies tend to outsource the clinical research project to private companies. We will talk about this type of companies later in this presentation. So some multinational companies can either perform the clinical research inside the company or outsource it to another private organizations. The third pathway for performing a clinical research, which is very, very important, is the CROs, or the Contract Research Organization, or sometimes it's called Clinical Research Organizations. A CRO is a company that provides support to pharmaceutical industry to perform research services outsourced on contract basis. The CROs can reduce the cost for the pharmaceutical companies regarding developing new medicines and the discovery of new drugs or testing new drugs in the clinical trial phases. The largest CRO in the world is IQVIA, also ICON and Sinus are one of the largest CROs in the world. In the Middle East region, we have a CRO, DipClin, one of the large regional companies in the field of CRO. The fourth pathway is considered trendy nowadays, which is the real world evidence or the real world data. The real world evidence, which means evidence from real world data outside the context of clinical trials. It's considered sometimes a paraclinical trials. This evidence is generated from routine clinical practice. You know that the RCTs require a controlled setting, require strict inclusion and exclusion criteria. However, the real world data tend to be more loose. We tend to enroll diversity of patients, multiple ages, multiple comorbidities. We should not apply to the strict inclusion or exclusion criteria of the clinical trials. So the real world evidence become so important when clinical trials cannot really account for the entire patient population because of the presence of comorbidities or age restrictions and so on. The fifth pathway for clinical trials in Egypt is the bioequivalence trials. You know, for a new generic to be licensed under a specific trade name, usually produced by local manufacturers, local pharmaceutical companies, which represent a large sector in the pharmaceutical industry in Egypt. This generic should be bioequivalent to the brand. So bioequivalence trials are performed in Egypt. We have many centers. One of them present in the Faculty of Pharmacy, Tanta University, where I was graduated. It is called the Bioequivalence Center. And one of them present in Cairo. It is called the International Centers for Bioequivalence and Research. And one of them present regionally in Jordan, which one of them most advanced bioequivalence centers in the Middle East region. And in this video, we will show you the services of the academia center in Jordan and what they are, what are the services they provide.
Are you looking for a CRO with unquestionable quality, less than 3 months project line, and competitive prices?
Feel confident. Your studies will be just in the right hands. Actima Center for Bioequivalence and Pharmaceutical Studies is a contract research organization that was established in 2000 for the purpose of providing contracted services for pharmaceutical companies.
The center is considered as one of the multi-projects invested by the Arab company for drug industry and medical appliances.
Our services: bioavailability bioequivalence studies,
Bioanalytical services,
data management services,
clinical services,
medical laboratory services,
quality assurance services,
training services,
institutional review board, IRB,
expert reports, and medical writing services.
aligning study timelines to meet your deadlines.
After contract and protocol signature, IRB review and approval takes about 1 week.
1 to 4 weeks for regulatory approval.
It takes us 1 to 7 days for investigational medicinal product importation and custom clearance.
1 to 3 days for screening.
1 to 4 weeks for study conduct.
2 to 3 weeks for bioanalysis.
1 week for preliminary results.
and then just 1 week for final report issuance. Our credentials.
We are considered the largest CRO in the MENA region. We provide a tailor-made service to support
reputation with its multinational presentation.
Our work is the best quality, most cost-effective, and is done as quickly as possible.
Our service has reached to several countries all over the world.
We were able to develop more than 200 methods.
And we've done more than 600 studies.
We manage a pool of volunteers exceeding 5,000 subjects. We work according to international guidelines like EMA, US FDA, WHO, and Turkish Ministry of Health.
And studies were done successfully for companies over the entire globe.
Expanding the business from the MENA region to Europe and US. Actima Biocenter.
Sixth pathway is quite different pathway, which is called the key opinion leaders or KOLs. The KOLs is not a typical clinical research. However, in marketing, the KOL is similar to the word influencer, which is currently used in social media. A KOL is, for example, a famous doctor who is trusted and well respected in the field of dermatology, for example. When this doctor recommends a specific brand for acne or hair loss, many junior dermatologists will follow him and they will prescribe the same brand. So KOLs advise companies to the unmet medical needs, to choose drug targets, to define potential product, to shape clinical programs and the clinical regimens, and they may be involved in drug regulatory or review process. Your role as a clinical researcher may be to perform some interviews with the KOLs to know the current standard of care or the current clinical practice, what the KOLs loves to prescribe, or what are the current regimens they are using. Now it's time for challenges. And this photo represents the most popular Egyptian breakfast, which consists of فول مدمس and طعمية. These are the most popular Egyptian dish or Egyptian meal. The challenges against the clinical research in Egypt is not different from the global challenges against the clinical research. The first is a lack of scientific knowledge. Many pharmaceutical and medical curriculum in the undergraduate level don't pay much attention to the literature search, to the study design, to the statistics. So the graduates from the Faculty of Pharmacies or Medicine don't have much knowledge about how to perform a scientific research. The second challenge is the regulations or the law, which needs some updates to cope with the current situation. We need some modifications to make it easier to perform a clinical research, to enroll patients, to obtain an ethical approval. The funding issue is always a problem due to limited resources. You know, the clinical researches needs too much cost, too much fund to fund such type of trials. The last topic we will talk about will be the career path. This would present Mohammed Salah, who is the most beloved Egyptian football player. If you choose the clinical research as your career, you will start as a clinical trial assistant CTA. A CTA will be your first position, which is more related to paperwork, to prepare files, to prepare Excel sheets. And your last position will be CRM or clinical research manager, which is more related to the patient and to the clinical setting. After 2 years experience as a CTA, as a clinical trial assistant, you will be promoted to CRA, Clinical Research Associate. Clinical Research Associate is a key person in the process of the clinical research because he will monitor the clinical trial and he will make sure that the researchers, the physicians, the pharmacists are abide to the specific protocols or the quality standard issued by the GCP, Good Clinical Practice, GCP guidelines. After 2 years experience as a CRA, Clinical Research Associate, you may be promoted to CRC, Clinical Research Coordinator, and then you promoted to CRL, Clinical Research Lead, and then to CRM or Clinical Research Manager. As you can see, the first position is usually more related to paperwork, and the higher positions are related to the clinical setting or the patient setting. So the CRL and CRM, they are dealing with the patient, they are inspecting the whole process of the clinical research, and they are making sure that everything is going well. Here are some YouTube. I will send this presentation to the organizers. You can watch these videos to know much information about the role of the CRA and CRC in the clinical research. At the end of this presentation, I will provide you with a starter guide. How can you start your career after graduation? How can you start your career as a clinical researcher? The best first step to obtain training courses and certification from the ACRP, the Association of Clinical Research Professionals, which is the worldwide most official organization that gives certifications about this position. So you can get certified. To get certified, you should pass an exam and you should pay some fees for this exam. This exam is usually about the GCP guidelines, the Good Clinical Practice Guidelines. You should know it well. And also you can find some training courses on the ACRP, which prepare you for such examination and for such titles. Currently, there is a free course which is open for enrollment. It's called Research and Proposal Writing Courses in Science. This course will expose you to the literature search, to the study design, to the statistics, to scientific writing, which is essential skills required to start your career as a clinical researcher. You can find this course through Author 8, and you can enroll. It will start in the coming September. Okay. You can also have a certificate program from the Harvard Medical School. They have 2 types of certificate programs about clinical research. The first is to some degree introductory module, which is called the ICRT, Introduction to Clinical Research Training, which was performed twice per year. I don't know the situation in the light of COVID-19 crisis, how things work, but ICRT was performed twice per year. They also have a more advanced program, which is called Global Clinical Research Scholar research training programs. These programs are available in a mixed mode. You should physically attend some days, and also you will be given some courses or some modules through online learning. If you wanted to obtain a degree in the clinical research, you can obtain a master degree in clinical research from Arizona State University. I don't know actually a university in Egypt which give a special program or special degree in the clinical research. Through Arizona State University, they have a clinical research management certificate program, and they have clinical research management master degree program. And another one is about regulatory science, and one is more general. I left the link for these programs if you can find it and apply for such programs. Thank you. Thank you for this, for your attendance. I hope you find this presentation and I am ready to answer your questions if you have any questions.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Doctor, for your amazing presentation. I myself, as an Egyptian, got the benefit really from these